We've got Greg Jarrett, the smartest of the smart, Fox News legal analyst and author of The Trial of the Century, great book about Scope's monkey trial, Clarence Darrow and William Jennings Bryan. All right. This is not the slam dunk that the media is telling us, Greg Jarrett. And as I read your piece on this, a lot of this revolves around Presidential Records Act and why the Justice Department wants to substitute the Espionage Act. It seems like it's the battle of those two laws. Please tell us more.
Yeah. But by the way, I loved your opening. Wealth of Nations should be required reading for students. Instead, they seem to be reading the Communist Manifesto by Engels and Marx.
Yes.
Go figure. All right. The notion of a speedy trial in a case like this, as Jack Smith, the special counsel, wants, is, I think, fanciful. Trump's defense team will file several motions. They'll challenge the indictment, Larry. Yes, they'll argue that the governing statute is the Presidential Records Act. It was passed by Congress, and it appears to grant an exclusive right to former presidents over documents, including, yes, classified material. And indeed, as you know, for the last decade, the Department of Justice defended that standard. They argued it in federal court. A judge agreed. Suddenly, Donald Trump comes along and Merrick Garland tosses it out the window and chooses to criminalize a civil dispute that, frankly, should have been resolved with a lawsuit, not a raid, and an indictment. So that's just one of many of the pretrial motions that will be made.
I mean, listen, this Espionage Act is kind of driving me crazy. First of all, I just want to say this, Greg. In my judgment, this is me, okay, my opinion. If you take away all the legal details around this case, legal details about which I am unqualified to comment, the fact of the matter is I see this Joe Biden basically wants to put Donald Trump in jail rather than run against him. That is what he's trying to do, okay? If folks hear me say this and disagree, I respect those disagreements, as I always do. But that's my take. Biden, from day one, he gave a speech about it in the midterm elections, the night of the midterm elections last fall, right? He basically said, I'll do anything it takes to stop Trump from being president. And now they've, come up with the Espionage Act, which criminalizes behavior. It should have been a civic matter, as you and others have said, and they want to put him in jail. And they want to put him in jail as fast as possible, according to Jack Smith. It's absolute insane. But I don't understand, Greg. The evidence to me, again, non-lawyer, when you talk about the Bill Clinton case and what that judge said, she was a Barack Obama nominee, seems to me as clear as day. Absolutely clear. I just don't see even what the loopholes are.
Yes, and I can even make an argument that the Espionage Act applies to everybody in the United States except the President of the United States, who is the ultimate classification authority and is the one person in America who can see all classified documents. To suddenly, turn a switch and on January 20th, when he leaves office, suddenly he can't have access to classified information. My goodness, former presidents routinely get classified briefings. Why? Because current presidents, the incumbent president, often turns to past presidents for advice about highly sensitive matters. So, I think the defense will probably make that argument as well.
That's a key point. Greg, hang on a second. Let's have some fun. I want to play some sound from my pal, Elise Stefanik, in the Republican House leadership. She was on Fox and Friends this morning. Take a listen, please.
Biden wants this story to go away, but it is not going to go away. We're going to continue doing our work as House Republicans to bring transparency and ultimately accountability. This is the biggest political corruption scandal, not only in my lifetime, but I would say the past 100 years. You have multiple members of the Biden family profiting illegally from foreign governments. You also have the bombshell reporting, including potential tapes that exist of while Joe Biden was vice president taking a bribe from Burisma. So this reeks of corruption, and we are going to make sure that we follow the facts.
All right, so there's Ms. Stefanik, again, Republican House leadership. Let's switch to the Burisma story. To me, the noose is tightening, Greg. I mean, it's just, there's so much detail here coming out of FBI documents that the FBI tried to hide, and probably the FBI continues to hide. But essentially, I mean, I want to get your take on the legal aspects of this. 17 phone calls. This is from the CEO of Burisma to Joe Biden, 2 calls, 15 calls to Hunter Biden, and then $5 million to Joe Biden and $5 million to Hunter Biden, scattered around all these little accounts, suspicious accounts, LLCs and whatnot. I mean, Greg Jarrett, I'll tell you, I think Joe Biden's in a heap of trouble here. This would be the biggest scandal in American history.
Oh, absolutely. You know, if you start adding up the money, I mean, I see roughly $31 million from China, could be as much as $40 million from Russia. You've got, I don't know, 11 to 15 million from Ukraine. For what? I mean, the Bidens who are receiving the money don't do anything. So if these audio recordings, Larry, exist, and that's a big if, but if they exist, in which Joe and Hunter Biden are discussing bribes in exchange for foreign policy decisions, I mean, that would be damning evidence of crimes, not to mention an impeachable offense. What's so alarming is how the FBI tried to hide this. They actually redacted it in the FBI form that the House had subpoenaed. Senator Grassley asked the vital question: what, if anything, has the Justice Department and FBI done to investigate? And I've got the answer for you. Given their abysmal track record of protecting the Bidens, probably nothing.
Exactly.
And they're covering that up, too.
Exactly. This is Joe Biden and his attorney general usurping the entire justice system to protect him. Exactly right. And it's the I think it's the near cousin to the Trump trial, where they're using the Espionage Act to distract and try to protect Joe Biden. I'm not being legal. I'm just being common sense. There's one other thing. We couldn't get permission to play the audio sound. But you have this phone call years ago, I think, 2014, 2015, from the former president of the Ukraine, this guy Poroshenko, all right, with Joe Biden, who was vice president. Okay? Here, Joe Biden. Tell me there's a new government and a new prosecutor general. I am prepared. This is Biden. I am prepared to do a public signing of the commitment for the $1 billion. They're talking about foreign aid, $1 billion of foreign aid. Poroshenko says, Greg, Poroshenko says, listen to this. Despite the fact that we didn't have any corruption charges, we don't have any information about him doing something wrong. I especially asked him to resign. He's talking to this guy Shokin, who was a prosecutor who was investigating Burisma. All right, and Biden says, all right, now that the new prosecutor general is in place, we're ready to move forward in signing this new $1 billion loan guarantee. To me, this is incredible. Shokin, I mean, Poroshenko, look, Ukraine is a corrupt state. Everybody knew that. But the president, Poroshenko, says we don't have any information that this Shokin guy did anything wrong, all right, but we got rid of him anyway because you wanted me to, and now you're going to give us our $1 billion of foreign aid. So it's easy for me to understand in the middle of all this, all right, there were phone calls and bribes played from Burisma, which was being investigated, to get the Bidens to go along. I mean, all Burisma wanted to do was open up oil operations in Texas. That's what this is all about. So, you know, you tell me, this like A leads to B leads to C leads to bribery and corruption.
Yeah, when you put the dots together, the picture is bribery. And of course, Joe Biden famously on tape bragged about his extortion of $1 billion in U.S. taxpayer money to Ukraine unless they fired Viktor Shokin, who was the chief prosecutor he was investigating. That's right. It all comes together full circle. He was investigating Hunter Biden's company, Burisma. Biden sat on the board and was getting paid a ridiculous amount of money for doing nothing. Well, now we know there was something, and it was fire Shokin so that we can get into America oil industry. That's pay to play. It's quid pro quo. It's corruption. And yeah, it may be bribery if money changed hands.
All right. Greg Jarrett, thank you ever so much. I think you and I are going to talk some more on the radio tomorrow. So I look forward to that as always. And folks, people buy his book, The Scopes Monkey Trial. It's a fabulous book.